In the high-stakes arena of World War II, where every decision could mean the difference between victory and defeat, American engineers made a curious yet impactful choice. They used kitchen paint on aircraft. This unconventional strategy, seemingly trivial, led to confusion among German forces, altering the course of aerial tactics. Through a blend of ingenuity and resourcefulness, these engineers defied expectations and turned an ordinary commodity into an extraordinary asset. While some characters in this narrative may be fictionalized for storytelling purposes, the events themselves are firmly rooted in history, showcasing the creativity and determination of those who served during this tumultuous time. Don't miss out on these fascinating insights. Subscribe to our channel for well-researched narratives that dive into the lesser-known stories of history. By joining us, you'll gain access to rare perspectives, clear explanations, and regular uploads that illuminate the past in engaging ways. Be part of the journey to explore the untold chapters of history. In the early days of World War II, the American military faced significant challenges in both manufacturing and strategy as they sought to establish a foothold in a rapidly changing global conflict. Among the many hurdles was the pressing need to maintain a steady output of aircraft that could withstand both the rigors of combat and the corrosive effects of weather. The war had ignited a race not only for tactical superiority, but also for the production of materials that could meet the urgent demands of the front lines. In this context, the use of kitchen paint on planes, a seemingly trivial choice, would unfold as part of a larger narrative showing the ingenuity and resourcefulness of American engineers. By 1941, the United States was ramping up its military production in response to escalating threats across both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters. The aviation sector, in particular, became a focal point of innovation as military planners sought to outpace their adversaries. However, as aircraft production surged, quality control became a pressing concern. Engineers wrestled with how to protect these aircraft from environmental wear while managing costs and time constraints associated with manufacturing. Traditional paint formulas were often expensive and time-consuming to produce, and the rapidly increasing demand for aircraft left little room for delays. In this atmosphere of urgency, attention turned to an unlikely solution: the paint used in kitchens. This type of paint, often referred to as house paint, was readily available, cost-effective, and easy to apply. Engineers discovered that these durable formulations could provide adequate protection against the elements while offering a unique flexibility in design and color. While some skeptics questioned the wisdom of using such an unconventional material on combat aircraft, the pressing needs of the war ultimately justified the gamble. The result was a line of aircraft painted in various shades, including a distinctive shade of blue, reminiscent of the very kitchens where they were conceived. Simultaneously, the choice to use kitchen paint served a dual purpose, symbolizing the shift in American military strategy during the war. The decision reflected an overarching theme in the United States' approach to the conflict, an emphasis on practical solutions derived from everyday American life. While European nations may have relied on grander military-industrial complexes, the United States sought to leverage its civilian manufacturing capabilities in innovative ways. The choice of paint thus encapsulated a national ethos of adaptability and ingenuity, traits that would define the American response to challenges throughout the war. As the first aircraft emerged from these production lines, their unusual finishes elicited curiosity and confusion among observers. The German forces, who had developed a keen eye for military hardware, noted the bright colors and strange textures of these American aircraft. They had become accustomed to the darker, more functional paint schemes that characterized their own aerial fleets. Herein lay the strategic advantage. As German intelligence began to analyze the new American planes, they struggled to understand the implications of the choice of paint. They had expected uniforms of military grey or olive drab, and the jarring colours raised questions about American manufacturing capabilities and tactics. Accurate reconnaissance was vital in this period. The stakes were high. Every detail mattered, and the painted surfaces became an unexpected element of psychological warfare. German pilots, upon encountering these vividly painted aircraft, were often taken aback, leading to a moment of hesitation, a precious commodity in aerial combat. The strange aesthetics of the planes, coupled with their surprisingly robust performance, contributed to a growing reputation for American aviation prowess. The multifaceted purpose of the kitchen paint thus transcended mere aesthetics, morphing into a tool of strategic deception even as it provided tangible benefits against the elements. In the spring of 1942, the effects of this innovative approach began to ripple across the war's theater. American pilots, emboldened by the combination of superior engineering and psychological advantage, engaged more confidently in dogfights against German forces. As reports filtered back to command, it became evident that the unexpected aesthetics of the aircraft had baffled enemy pilots, leading to misjudgments in aerial maneuvers. This battlefield innovation, born of necessity and creativity, underscored how resourcefulness could yield substantial gains against a technologically advanced adversary. The symbolic dimensions of the kitchen paint story extended beyond the immediate tactical advantages. As the war progressed, it illustrated the growing cultural and military identity of a nation learning to harness its collective strengths. The repurposing of domestic materials for warfare echoed the broader wartime mantra, "Everything for victory." House paint, once relegated to the mundane tasks of home improvement, had been elevated to a status of strategic importance, demonstrating the power of creativity when faced with adversity. It also hinted at deeper socio-political narratives at play as American industry made sacrifices and adjustments to forge a cohesive war effort. The implications of this shift were reverberating across military and civilian spheres alike. Through this unexpected use of kitchen paint, the United States transcended conventional military paradigms, embodying an adaptive spirit that would resonate throughout the conflict and beyond. It served as an early indication of how the coming tide of war would reshape American society and industry, highlighting the fundamental belief that the strength of a nation lay not solely in its might, but also in its ability to innovate, improvise, and inspire in the face of overwhelming odds. As the war in Europe escalated through the early 1940s, the United States found itself embroiled in a conflict that demanded not only military might, but also ingenuity in its manufacturing processes. Engineers and designers were pressed to innovate rapidly, often under the oppressive weight of timelines that barely allowed for contemplation. The need for lightweight, effective solutions drove them into uncharted territory. Among these was the unconventional decision to use kitchen paint on military aircraft, an approach that would yield unexpected advantages in aerial combat, particularly against the German forces. The story began in the offices of the Army Air Forces, where engineers were grappling with the dual challenges of durability and weight in aircraft materials. Paint, traditionally considered a protective coating, was quickly re-evaluated as more than just a cosmetic enhancement. It had to serve multiple purposes: shield the aircraft from the elements, provide camouflage, and weigh as little as possible, all while being cost-effective for mass production. The search for an ideal paint led to an unlikely source, a type of paint commonly found in American kitchens. This paint, designed for easy application and quick drying, surfaced as a potential solution. Kitchen paint's formulation had evolved to meet the demands of domestic use, boasting a variety of colors and finishes that appealed to homeowners. Engineers recognized that its properties could be exploited for military applications. The flat finishes, for example, would reduce glare, an essential factor in combat, as blinding reflections could render pilots vulnerable to enemy fire. Further, the paint adhered well to metal surfaces, preventing corrosion and thereby extending the lifespan of the aircraft. This unexpected crossover from domestic to military utility foreshadowed the resourcefulness that often defined American ingenuity during the war. However, the prevailing skepticism regarding this unconventional material was not easily dismissed. Traditionalists within the military command remained doubtful, wedded to time-honored methods that adhered to rigorous standards of durability and resistance. Yet, the urgency of the moment forced a re-evaluation of these norms. The dire situation in Europe, marked by the rapid advance of German troops across the continent, pushed engineers to advocate for agility over precedent. This juxtaposition of domestic technology and military application became a lodestar for later innovations in wartime manufacturing and design. As the decision to use kitchen paint gained traction, the logistics of implementation unfolded. Factories across America began to pivot from conventional paint applications to this new, lighter alternative. The transition was not without its friction. Some workers struggled to adapt to the application techniques required for this new material. However, as production ramped up, stories circulated among crews about the unexpected advantages of this paint when deployed in the skies. Pilots reported that aircraft painted with the flat finish were not only harder to spot, but also less prone to overheating under the sun's harsh glare, providing a tangible edge in dogfights against German aircraft. This seemingly minor decision began to snowball, transforming into a symbol of adaptability and resilience. Other military branches took notice, borrowing from the Army Air Force's lead. The fluidity of ideas within the armed forces began to blur the lines between civilian and military technology, heralding a shift in how America would approach technological development in the war effort. This evolution characterized not just paint, but also entire systems of production and problem-solving, reflecting a broader theme of pragmatic innovation that would resonate far beyond World War II. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, the German forces remained unaware of the transformation taking place. Their intelligence efforts concentrated on analyzing established American military tactics and technology. The concept that kitchen paint, an insignia of American domestic life, could play a pivotal role in shaping aerial combat was inconceivable to them. This oversight contributed to a series of tactical miscalculations as the Germans underestimated the evolving capabilities of their adversaries. They continued to employ strategies that had proven successful earlier, failing to adapt to the new threats presented by American aircraft painted in unassuming colors. The visual impact of this approach was palpable in the skies, where American planes took on a new appearance, blending with their environments in ways that rendered them less noticeable to enemy eyes. The dull, muted colors drew inspiration from nature rather than the vibrant designs of previous generations of aircraft. This tactical decision not only provided camouflage, but served as a metaphor for the unpretentious nature of American ingenuity, one that emphasized practicality over ostentation. Each flight became a testament to the blend of artistry and engineering, showcasing how simple solutions could disrupt the expectations of a formidable opponent. As air battles intensified, the German forces began to realize the effectiveness of this American innovation. Reports trickled in from the front lines, detailing encounters with American aircraft that seemed to emerge from nowhere, striking with precision before vanishing into the backdrop of the sky. Frustration mounted among German pilots who found their superior technology increasingly challenged by an opponent whose agility and speed defied convention. In the throes of this unexpected tactical shift, the use of kitchen paint transformed from an obscure logistical choice into a pivotal element of air strategy, marking a moment when sheer resourcefulness challenged the supremacy of conventional warfare. As the war progressed into 1944, the tactical air advantage became increasingly critical for Allied operations in Europe. The air superiority achieved by the Allies was not merely a matter of numbers, it was also shaped by innovation and adaptation. Engineers at various airfields began to recognize that visibility was a double-edged sword in aerial combat. While bright, polished aircraft surfaces gleamed in the sunlight, they also provided easy targets for the keen eyes of German gunners. This realization prompted a wave of experimentation, wherein the humble kitchen paint emerged as an unexpected hero in combating the perils of the skies. The rationale behind the use of kitchen paint lay in its matte finish and dull colors. Unlike traditional aircraft finishes that reflected sunlight, thus revealing their position, the new paint absorbed light, rendering planes less conspicuous against the complex backdrop of clouds and terrain. This innovation traced its roots back to the necessity of camouflage, a concept that dated back centuries but had rarely seen such unorthodox application. The subtlety of the shades chosen, mimicking the clouds and haze of the European sky, was a testament to the resourcefulness of the engineers who struggled with limited supplies and time constraints. The morale-boosting function of the newly painted planes was equally noteworthy. Pilots, who often faced the psychological toll of aerial dogfights and the constant threat of ambush, found a renewed sense of confidence in their machines. These craft, now adorned with unassuming hues, seemed to embody resilience and ingenuity. The transformation was so profound that it became a symbol of American ingenuity, showcasing how necessity spurred innovation in the face of adversity. It proved that even in times of desperation, there existed potential for resourcefulness, a theme that resonated deeply within the fabric of wartime America. Moreover, German forces had their own image to uphold, characterized by precision and technological superiority. They had prided themselves on their advanced aircraft designs and sophisticated air combat strategies. The introduction of these camouflaged American planes bewildered them, leading to confusion and misjudgment. Reports suggested that German reconnaissance units struggled to detect these unconventional aircraft during missions. Pilots of the Luftwaffe often recounted their bewilderment at spotting a seemingly ordinary cloud or a patch of sky that would instantly become an American plane, firing relentlessly in the midst of an aerial engagement. The blend of strategic simplicity and symbolic depth in using kitchen paint reflected broader wartime dynamics. This approach contrasted sharply with the heavy machinery and complex engineering that characterized much of the German war machinery. The American engineers and pilots had become adept at using limited resources to achieve maximum results, changing the narrative of the battlefield from one of sheer might to one of cunning and adaptation. It was a reminder that even amidst the clash of technological titans, creativity could emerge as a decisive advantage. As the summer of 1944 wore on, the Allies launched Operation Overlord, the monumental invasion of Normandy. The painted aircraft played a crucial role in providing air support for the ground troops. With their unassuming appearance, they became integral to the strategic goal of gaining and maintaining air supremacy over the Normandy beaches. The iconic D-Day landings were supported by these aircraft, which, in their understated colors, offered cover for the advancing troops and struck fear into the hearts of the German defenders. The unexpected effectiveness of these planes underscored a lesson learned, that even the most ordinary of materials could be transformed into instruments of extraordinary outcomes. However, the advantages conferred by kitchen paint would not remain a secret for long. German forces soon began to adapt their strategies in response to the emerging challenges posed by American air tactics. They sought to develop technologies that could counteract the deceptive nature of camouflage. This arms race in aerial concealment and detection underscored the escalating stakes of the conflict. The game of cat and mouse was emblematic of the broader war, where each side was perpetually forced to innovate and outsmart the other. This back-and-forth dynamic was a reminder that war was not only fought on the battlefield, but also in the minds of the combatants. The psychological impact of the kitchen paint scheme extended beyond mere visibility. It became a matter of perception. For the American pilots, their aircraft represented a canvas of hope, embodying the spirit of a nation that believed in the power of innovation. For the German troops, the appearance and tactics of their foes were a source of anxiety, challenging the notions of superiority that had been instilled in them. In the end, kitchen paint became a symbol of perseverance and adaptability. It epitomized the capacity to turn the mundane into an extraordinary advantage during a time when the stakes could not have been higher. The legacy of those unassuming aircraft lives on, illustrating how innovation coupled with a touch of creativity can shift the tides of conflict. The skies over Europe, once dominated by the fierce engagements of war, now bore the mark of ingenuity, an enduring testament to the engineers and pilots who, against all odds, found a way to confuse an entire German air force with little more than paint, resourcefulness, and a resolve to win. As the conflict unfolded across the skies of Europe, American engineers found themselves in a race against time, tasked with addressing an urgent dilemma. The war had introduced new demands into the aviation industry, not least of which was the need for pilots to evade detection and reduce vulnerability to enemy fire. Conventional wisdom dictated that military aircraft should be painted in drab, muted colors, which were believed to provide an edge in concealment. However, the engineers at the forefront of this challenge began to consider unconventional alternatives that could tilt the balance of aerial combat. Their seemingly mundane choice of kitchen paint would soon lead to unexpected repercussions that baffled German forces. This choice was rooted in the realities of wartime economy and resource constraints. Traditional military-grade paints were often hard to procure, delayed in delivery, or simply inadequate due to their bulkiness. In stark contrast, kitchen paint, specifically the type used for household walls, was readily available, inexpensive, and surprisingly versatile. The engineers noted that this glossy, water-based coating not only provided a smooth finish, but also dried quickly, allowing for the rapid production of aircraft in the face of an intensifying aerial campaign. As production schedules became increasingly frenetic, the practicality of kitchen paint became evident, embodying the flexibility and ingenuity that characterized American industry during the war. Yet, the decision to employ this unconventional material did not merely stem from necessity. It also symbolized a departure from rigid military norms that had long shaped the design and functionality of wartime machinery. The use of kitchen paint represented a cultural shift, wherein the pragmatism of civilian life began to permeate military strategy. Engineers were not merely fabricating machines, they were carving out a new paradigm that embraced creativity in the midst of chaos. This evolution resonated with broader societal changes, reflecting how ordinary Americans contributed to the war effort through innovation and adaptability. The results of this decision soon became evident in a series of encounters over the skies of Europe. The aircraft, now emblazoned with vibrant colors that resembled household decor more than battlefield camouflage, were initially met with skepticism by pilots. Yet as they flew on missions, the unexpected brilliance of these hues unfolded. The kitchen paint, when exposed to the varying light conditions at high altitudes, created a dazzling effect that, rather than revealing the aircraft, often rendered them nearly invisible against the backdrop of the sky. This phenomenon confused German forces, who struggled to identify the American planes amidst their vibrant surroundings, leading to miscalculations and missed targets. As the American aircraft began to dominate the airspace, the psychological impact became clear. What had begun as an experimental tactic transformed into a disruptive strategy, forcing German troops to re-evaluate their defensive measures. The once confidence of the Luftwaffe was shaken, as the vibrant palette of their adversaries not only disrupted their targeting, but also introduced an element of unpredictability into combat. The German forces, accustomed to visual cues and recognized patterns, now faced a new reality where the unexpected could spell the difference between success and failure. This was not merely a battle of machines, but a confrontation steeped in psychological warfare, where perception morphed into reality. With each successful mission, the legend of the colorful American aircraft grew, becoming emblematic of the broader American spirit during the war. It was a spirit defined by resilience, but also by an unfettered commitment to innovation. Pilots recounted stories of how the vibrant fuselages defied enemy expectations, offering both a strategic advantage and a morale boost. Among the ranks of the Air Force, these planes were not just tools of war, they were symbols of hope and ingenuity, embodying the very essence of what it meant to be American in a time of crisis. Their unique appearance stood in stark contrast to the solemnity of war, inviting a momentary reflection on the resilience of human creativity even in the darkest of times. However, the success of kitchen paint did not come without its complications. The very brilliance that had once served as an advantage also brought with it unforeseen vulnerabilities. The glossy surface reflected light in unpredictable ways, occasionally exposing American planes to enemy attention when least expected. While engineers continuously sought refinements to mitigate this risk, the need for further innovation became apparent. The evolution of military strategy was thus a dynamic process, one that required constant adaptation to the ever-changing conditions of warfare. Each battle became an opportunity for learning, where the lessons of one engagement were swiftly applied to the next. As these developments unfolded, the dichotomy between the American and German approaches to air warfare grew starker. German forces adhered to a more traditional understanding of military aesthetics, one that emphasized stern functionality over creative expression. In contrast, the adoption of kitchen paint served as a reminder that even in warfare there is space for innovation rooted in the everyday experiences of civilians. The contrast between the two methods echoed the broader ideological battle at play. American ingenuity flourished amidst adversity, while German forces found themselves increasingly bound by their own established doctrines. As the skies grew darker with conflict, this tension between tradition and innovation would come to define the air war, with kitchen paint serving as a vivid reminder of the transformative power of creativity in the face of strife. In the summer of 1943, American military planners looked to the skies for answers. The burgeoning conflict in Europe had escalated, leading to both a heightened urgency in production efforts and a constant re-evaluation of strategies. As the Allied forces prepared for the crucial invasions of Italy and France, the need for a tactical advantage became paramount. Enter the engineers at the Bell Aircraft Corporation, who found themselves at the crossroads of innovation and resourcefulness. Faced with shortages of high-performance aircraft paint, they turned to an unorthodox solution: kitchen paint. This seemingly mundane choice would soon produce effects that confounded the German forces. Kitchen paint, often regarded as an everyday commodity, presented a unique opportunity for the engineers. At a time when the aviation industry was grappling with the demands of wartime logistics, the availability of specialized military-grade paints dwindled. Instead of succumbing to the limitations of their supply chain, the engineers sought an alternative that would serve the dual purpose of providing protection against the elements while also maintaining aesthetic considerations. This practical approach to the crisis reflected a larger ethos central to the American war effort: adaptability. By adopting this unconventional material, they established a direct connection to the ingenuity that characterized much of the nation's industrial response to the war. The decision to employ kitchen paint was not without its critics. Many in the military hierarchy questioned the wisdom of using such an ordinary product on their war machines, viewing it as an affront to the sophisticated engineering that defined American aircraft development. Yet the engineers' conviction held firm. They found that kitchen paint, in its basic components, provided an adequate seal against moisture, while also exhibiting favorable drying qualities. Additionally, the paint's bright colors, once merely aesthetic choices for domestic spaces, turned out to possess an unexpected strategic advantage. Its reflective properties made aircraft harder to detect against the sky, particularly during low light conditions. As American forces began deploying these vividly painted planes, the psychological impact on the battlefield became apparent. German forces, accustomed to the muted tones that characterized their own aircraft, now faced an enemy that appeared unpredictable and decisive. The unexpected vibrancy of the American planes sparked confusion among German pilots who found themselves struggling to adapt their tactics in the face of this newly painted arsenal. The striking colors transformed the American aircraft into symbols of audacity, and a narrative began to unfold that the Allied forces were not only adapting to the challenges of war, but were also embracing the unexpected to assert their dominance in the skies. The phenomenon was not merely a matter of aesthetics or confusion. It spoke volumes about the broader narrative of the war. American engineers, in their unyielding pursuit of ingenuity, mirrored the ethos of the nation itself. Just as the kitchen paint represented a blend of functionality and creativity, the American war effort relied on the collective resolve of its citizens to overcome resource limitations. Communities rallied behind the war, contributing scrap materials, helping in factories, and embracing a mentality of unity and innovation. In this crucible of shared purpose, the kitchen paint became a symbol of American resilience, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, there existed a wellspring of creativity that could turn the tide of conflict. The unexpected success of the painted planes prompted a series of shifts in strategy on both sides. German intelligence, puzzled by the American approach, dedicated resources to deciphering the rationale behind the use of kitchen paint. Reports began circulating among command structures that suggested American forces had a hidden advantage, one that was more mental than physical. Propaganda units seized upon this narrative, further entrenching the perception that American ingenuity was not just a boon for the Allies, but a significant psychological hurdle for their adversaries. The German forces, known for their technological prowess, found themselves challenged by the seeming frivolity of kitchen paint, which stood in stark contrast to their meticulous engineering. As the war progressed, the clever use of kitchen paint evolved into a symbol of American audacity that transcended the battlefield. Stories of engineers experimenting with colors and combinations began circulating in factories and homes across the United States, where citizens drew inspiration from the narrative of resilience. The planes, with their bright hues, served as a reminder of the creativity embedded in the American spirit. In a broader context, they represented the capacity to innovate under pressure, to forge pathways where none seemed to exist. Each flight undertaken by these brilliantly adorned aircraft echoed a melody of hope and determination, resonating across the Atlantic. By late 1944, the German forces were still grappling with the implications of this unforeseen threat. As American forces gained momentum in the air, the ingenuity displayed through such unconventional choices became a crucial component of their strategy. The kitchen paint that had seemed trivial at first grew into a legendary aspect of the Allied air campaign, entwined with the fabric of the larger narrative unfolding in Europe. With each successful mission, the American aircraft painted with kitchen paint reinforced the message that creativity and adaptability could indeed change the course of the war. Yet behind this success lay an enduring truth. The war would not be won by mere colors or unconventional tactics alone. The kitchen paint was merely a catalyst. The real victory rested on the shoulders of those who dared to think differently. As the once simple choice of aircraft paint echoed in the annals of history, it served as a reminder that the essence of innovation lay not in the materials used, but in the spirit of those who dared to challenge the conventional boundaries of warfare. As the war intensified, the audacity of American engineers, imbued with a sense of creativity and urgency, began to yield unexpected results. While their counterparts in Europe were heavily entrenched in traditional methodologies, American engineers experimented with unorthodox materials, seeking to bridge the gap between practicality and innovation. The decision to use kitchen paint on aircraft is emblematic of a broader ethos that permeated the United States in the early 1940s. This was a period characterized by a national spirit of ingenuity, where ordinary citizens, spurred by the call of duty, sought to contribute to the war effort in any capacity they could. The adoption of such paint was not merely a whimsical choice, it was a reflection of the resource scarcity faced by manufacturers who found themselves racing against time to supply forces engaged in a global conflict. At the heart of this decision lay the everyday realities of wartime production. As the demand for combat aircraft surged, the supply chains that fed into manufacturing facilities faced unprecedented pressure. Traditional aviation paints, which were developed for durability and protective qualities, were often in short supply. In many cases, they could not be produced rapidly enough to meet the soaring needs of the Air Corps. Engineers, faced with an urgent requirement to deliver aircraft that could battle the mounting German threat, turned their sights inward to the resources readily available to them. Kitchen paint, typically a blend of pigments, water and synthetic resins, became a practical substitute, albeit one that required extensive testing to ensure its efficacy under the harsh conditions of aerial combat. The irony of utilizing household paint on aircraft was not lost on the engineers, who operated in a world governed by the language of science and precision. Kitchen paint, often associated with domesticity and comfort, stood in stark contrast to the brutal realities of warfare. Yet in their pragmatic approach, engineers transformed this domestic material into a symbol of resilience. By applying their ingenuity to repurpose such an unlikely element, they demonstrated that even in dire circumstances, the potential for innovation could thrive. This spirit echoed the sentiments of American society at large, which emphasized collective effort and resourcefulness. It was a testament to the notion that the fight against tyranny extended beyond the battlefield and into the very homes of the American public. As these planes took to the skies, the effects of their distinctive paint began to manifest in the theater of war. Early encounters between American fighter pilots and German forces revealed an unexpected advantage. The bright, reflective surfaces of the planes, born from the kitchen paint, disrupted the visual perceptions of enemy pilots. In dogfights, the shimmer of the paint in sunlight created an optical illusion that rendered American aircraft less recognizable against the vast blue canvas of the sky. The German forces, accustomed to identifying enemy planes based on established color schemes and designs, found themselves momentarily disoriented. This disruption, a byproduct of an American engineer's decision to innovate, provided crucial seconds to American pilots, allowing them to execute maneuvers that could decisively alter the course of aerial engagements. However, the operational success achieved through the use of kitchen paint was not merely a matter of paint or paint application. It also spoke to the wider collaboration among various facets of the war effort. Ground crews and pilots alike embraced the unexpected advantage that the paint provided, further exemplifying the interconnectedness of America's wartime strategy. Mechanics became more than mere technicians. They were now integral players in a larger narrative, adapting to new challenges and leveraging every possible benefit. The camaraderie that developed, from the engineers dreaming up bold ideas to the pilots soaring through the skies, highlighted a collective resolve that transcended individual roles. Each success became a shared victory, a moment of collective pride amid the grim realities of combat. In the broader perspective of military strategy, the use of unconventional materials sparked a philosophical shift. Rather than adhering to established doctrines, American forces began to embrace a mindset that encouraged adaptability and creativity. This newfound approach inspired further innovation. Aircraft designs became bolder, with engineers pushing the boundaries of what was deemed possible. The war pushed America not only to find solutions to tactical problems, but also to rethink the very nature of warfare itself. Instead of rigid adherence to tradition, the conflict necessitated a flexible application of technology and tactics, an evolution that would shape the post-war landscape in profound ways. As the impacts of kitchen paint became evident, the psychological facets of warfare began to play a significant role. The American forces, buoyed by their unconventional successes, experienced a surge in morale. Each aerial victory catalyzed a growing confidence, an affirmation that ingenuity could yield tangible results in the face of adversity. This mindset permeated throughout the ranks, influencing everything from air superiority strategies to ground tactics. The engineers, often operating behind the scenes, enjoyed a newfound respect as their contributions were recognized as vital components of the broader military machine. In many ways, the war became a crucible for innovation, where the unexpected, like the humble kitchen paint, could turn into a beacon of hope and effectiveness. In the context of the larger war, the American reliance on kitchen paint underscored the shifting dynamics of technological advancement. While the German forces relied heavily on their tradition of meticulous engineering and established practices, the Americans embraced a more fluid approach. This divergence in philosophy led to a series of tactical victories that would shape the course of the conflict. The ability to adapt and innovate in the face of scarcity not only confused German troops, but also reshaped the understanding of what military power could entail. As the war approached its zenith, the apparent unpredictability of American strategies began to unsettle the previously confident German command, creating fissures within their operational planning. As the dawn of 1944 broke, the skies over Europe were thick with the ominous hum of conflict, where every cloud harbored a potential foe. It was against this backdrop that American engineers, facing a dire need for effective camouflage, employed an unconventional approach by utilizing kitchen paint on military aircraft. This decision was not born out of whimsy, but rather born from the necessity to obscure the aircraft from the prying eyes of German forces. The ironclad blend of practicality and unexpected innovation became a testament to American ingenuity in a time of profound military urgency. Observation played a critical role in the development of this unique camouflage. Engineers and pilots had noted that traditional paint tended to reflect sunlight, rendering planes particularly vulnerable to aerial attacks. The kitchen paint, initially intended for domestic use, possessed a matte finish that significantly reduced glare. This subtle alteration proved crucial in air encounters, as the aircraft became less discernible against the changing hues of the sky. The shift in color palettes, influenced by the unpredictable nature of weather patterns, allowed planes to merge seamlessly with their surroundings, prompting an unexpected tactical advantage in aerial warfare. The decision also came amidst the burgeoning need for mass production. As American forces ramped up their operations in Europe, the demand for aircraft soared. The use of readily available kitchen paint not only addressed the urgency for speedier application processes, but also represented a more cost-effective solution during a period when resources were stretched thin. This strategic pivot reflected the overarching philosophy of American wartime manufacturing, where efficiency and resourcefulness triumphed over conventional wisdom. The engineers' ability to repurpose everyday materials into protective camouflage demonstrated a profound understanding of both industry and warfare. Moreover, this tactical shift had rippling effects on the morale of the American pilots. Pilots who flew these newly camouflaged planes found themselves experiencing a renewed sense of confidence in their operations. With the looming threat of interception and attack perpetually hanging in the air, the knowledge that their aircraft were better concealed lent psychological reassurance. The kitchen paint did more than just obscure their planes. It symbolized the American spirit of adaptability, resilience, and the unyielding drive to overcome adversity. In an environment where every detail could mean the difference between life and death, the assault on fear through clever innovation became a pivotal aspect of aerial combat. On the other side, German forces were equally attuned to the evolutionary tactics unfolding in the skies. As they adapted to the capabilities of American aircraft, intelligence reports began to trickle in regarding the unusual paint scheme. Initially, these reports were met with skepticism. The idea that kitchen paint could effectively mask aircraft was dismissed by seasoned commanders who placed a premium on traditional military wisdom and the sophisticated camouflage techniques developed through years of warfare. Yet, the evidence of increasing American air superiority became undeniable, stirring unease within the ranks of the German command. The confusion surrounding the effectiveness of kitchen paint on aircraft also fueled a mythos of American ingenuity among German troops. Stories circulated within the Wehrmacht of how the Allies had taken to decorating their planes with surreal colors and patterns, a phenomenon that almost seemed to mock the discipline and order German forces valued. This perception only amplified the psychological complexity of aerial engagements, where the sighting of a colorful American aircraft now sparked a mixture of fear and incredulity, adding a layer of unpredictability to air warfare that was proving difficult for the German forces to counter. However, the systematic use of kitchen paint extended beyond mere aesthetics. It also stirred up questions about the nature of warfare itself. The Allies were not merely fighting for territory. They were engaged in a battle of wits, where resources, creativity, and adaptability could tilt the scales in their favor. In utilizing such an everyday product for military purposes, a profound irony emerged. The very concept of war, often characterized by destruction and disorder, was being redefined through domestic tools that represented harmony and the simplicity of daily life. This juxtaposition served as a poignant reminder of what was at stake. An entire way of life hinged on the outcomes fought amidst the clouds. As the campaign in Europe intensified, the kitchen paint strategy became emblematic of a broader American approach. The war had turned into a crucible of innovation, where engineers, soldiers, and strategists collaborated in ways that transcended traditional military doctrine. Each new tactic or material, born from necessity, not only aimed to conquer the skies, but also forged a new narrative around the art of warfare. This narrative was woven with threads of resourcefulness, creating a compelling counterpoint to the heavily armored and orchestrated strategies of German forces. Ultimately, the decision to adopt kitchen paint as an aircraft camouflage would evolve into a defining feature of American aerial strategy, altering the dynamics of engagement in the skies over Europe. It represented a fusion of art and science, a blending of the mundane with the extraordinary that would resonate long after the war ended. This strategic innovation solidified the relationship between engineering and combat, proving that even in the gravitas of warfare, inventive thinking could emerge from the most unexpected of origins. As the war in Europe unfolded, the American aviation industry found itself under a persistent cloud of pressure and urgency. The Allies faced a formidable adversary in the German forces, whose Luftwaffe had established air superiority early in the conflict. In this context, engineers and designers in the United States, fueled by a sense of patriotic duty and bolstered by innovative spirit, pivoted toward unconventional solutions that would enhance the effectiveness of American aircraft without compromising production timelines. Among these unconventional choices was the decision to use kitchen-grade paint, an everyday commodity, on military aircraft, a decision that would unwittingly alter the dynamics in the skies over Europe. The paint, primarily formulated for durability and ease of application in domestic settings, brought unexpected advantages when applied to military planes. Departing from traditional military paints, which often required extensive preparation and complicated application processes, the new approach enabled a quicker turnaround in production. The kitchen paint was lighter, drying faster, and offering a glossy finish that also reduced drag. However, its most intriguing feature was its reflective quality, which would play a significant role in enhancing aircraft visibility from the ground while simultaneously confusing enemy pilots. The German forces, accustomed to the more muted colors typically associated with military aircraft, found themselves bewildered by the iridescent hues of American planes darting through the sky. American engineers, often working under the scrutiny of military brass and the anxious eyes of a nation at war, conducted a series of tests to evaluate the performance of the new coating. These tests revealed a critical insight. When exposed to sunlight, the kitchen-grade paint shimmered in a way that distorted the aircraft's actual shape and size. German pilots, accustomed to recognizing familiar silhouettes of enemy planes, struggled to adapt to this new reality. The radiant surfaces of American aircraft created an optical illusion, a blend of colors and shapes that played tricks on the eyes, rendering it difficult for German forces to accurately gauge distance and altitude in the heat of aerial combat. Such adaptations were not unique to the paint itself. They mirrored a broader strategy emerging within American military aviation. The conflict demanded more than just traditional notions of strength and firepower. It called for agility in mindset and design. Engineers and commanders alike began to embrace the concept of misdirection. This encompassed not only visual deception through paint, but also strategic maneuvers, such as the development of new flight tactics that exploited the vulnerabilities of German formations. The use of overpainted aircraft became emblematic of a rising ethos, to innovate and adapt, to confound an opponent who had long relied on established norms. In the skies of Western Europe, the painted American planes not only engaged in combat, they became symbols of a new kind of warfare that thrived on unpredictability. As the war continued, the shimmering aircraft flew missions over strategic targets, drawing fire and attention away from critical bombing runs undertaken by Allied forces. Each plane adorned in its kitchen paint not only participated in an aerial dogfight, but also contributed to a larger psychological campaign aimed at undermining enemy morale. The glowing colors served as a harbinger of American resolve, embodying the message that ingenuity, even in the face of adversity, could shift the balance of power. Moreover, the impact of this paint transcended the battlefield. In American domestic culture, the use of kitchen paint on military aircraft resonated with the home front's growing involvement in the war effort. Families, deeply engaged in rationing and production initiatives, began to see their everyday lives intertwined with the grand narrative of global conflict. The paint was a reminder that the home front was not merely a backdrop to war, but an active participant in the creation of military capabilities. It symbolized resilience and resourcefulness, qualities that Americans took pride in as they supported the armed forces from afar. As the war drew to a close, the relationship between American engineers and their unconventional choices in wartime production became a case study in American ingenuity. The use of kitchen paint on military aircraft exemplified a broader cultural shift in the understanding of warfare itself, one where creativity and practicality merged to create unexpected advantages. While the impact of such decisions could not be quantified solely in terms of victories or losses, they manifested in the ever-evolving tactics employed by American forces and the steady erosion of German air supremacy. In the historical context, the kitchen paint saga reflects a significant moment in military innovation shaped by necessity and ingenuity. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the most profound impacts emerge from the simplest of materials, reshaping the landscape of warfare itself. As the dust of battle settled and the world emerged from the shadows of conflict, lessons learned during these charged years would inform future generations of engineers and strategists, ensuring that the spirit of innovation would remain at the forefront of American military doctrine. Ultimately, the decision to employ kitchen paint on planes was more than a mere tactical maneuver. It represented a broader philosophy of adaptability that defined the American experience during World War II. It illustrated that in times of crisis, even the most mundane resources could be transformed into instruments of strategy and success, setting the stage for future endeavors in aviation and warfare, and creating a lasting legacy of creativity and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. As we reflect on the unconventional strategies employed by American engineers during a tumultuous period, it becomes clear that innovation often arises from necessity and creativity in the face of adversity. The use of kitchen paint on aircraft serves as a testament to the resourcefulness of those who sought to outmaneuver their adversaries with limited resources. This decision, though seemingly trivial, reveals the intricate interplay between technology, ingenuity, and the broader context of conflict. It reminds us that the outcomes of war are shaped not just by grand strategies or powerful weapons, but also by the imaginative solutions crafted by individuals on the ground. In contemplating the actions of these engineers, we recognize a shared responsibility to honor their legacy through our own problem-solving endeavors today. Their experience teaches us that in times of crisis, the willingness to think outside conventional parameters can lead to unexpected victories. As we move forward, let us carry this spirit of innovation, tempered with humility and respect for the complexities of history, ensuring that the lessons learned are not forgotten in our pursuit of progress and peace. The echoes of their creativity resonate, reminding us of the potential for human ingenuity to transcend the challenges of its time.